Today on Dr. Phil.
There is an epidemic of missing women.
Missing and murdered in Montana.
If you are born an indigenous woman, it's almost 100% likely that you are going to be preyed upon.
People can't even get their mind around how horrific this is.
Distraught parents.
They only searched for her for 6 days.
How do you explain the lack of reactivity to this?
And Target.
If I were to go missing, I wouldn't get the attention like Gabby. It's scary.
You have most likely heard of Gabby Petito, Natalie Holloway, Lacey Peterson. But have you heard of Henny Scott, Ashley Loring, Jermaine Charlo? These are the names of just a few of the indigenous women who go missing daily. Some are discovered dead. Days or weeks later, some are never found. But the mystery of what happened to them remains unsolved. Families say they don't get answers from law enforcement and are left grief-stricken with no closure. Their stories are not unique, not in Native American communities where there is an epidemic of missing women. According to their families, no one seems to care about these girls, and that's why you never hear about them.
Native American women are facing a crisis of violence on reservations and in U.S. cities.
My child was murdered, chopped up, put in a suitcase. Native Americans make up 6.7% of Montana's population. But according to state data, between 2016 and 2018, they accounted for more than a quarter of the missing person reports.
There's no laws out there to keep our people safe.
There is a serious problem with missing Native Americans, particularly Native American women.
A body was found Friday on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation near Lame Deer. Today, we confirmed with the Northern Cheyenne Tribe Vice President that the body was 14-year-old Henny Scott. The body was found covered in snow in an area behind a house in the Muddy Creek area west of Lame Deer. Scott was a freshman at Lame Deer High School and would have turned 15 in January.
When Paula and Nate watched the media uproar over the disappearance of YouTuber Gabby Petito, they couldn't help but think to themselves, where was the FBI when we needed them? Their 14-year-old daughter, Henny Scott, disappeared almost 3 years ago while she was hanging out with friends. Nate says no one gave them any attention even after she was found.
The last day we saw Henny was December 7th, 2018. About 3 o'clock, Henny had asked to go to the open gym at the middle school. A couple hours later, Henny called and asked me if she could go to the basketball tournament. I told Henny that she needed to come back home. She said, okay, Mom, I'll be home.
Well, the next morning when we woke up, I looked at our messages and I had no response from her.
It was normal for Henny to be gone like 2-3 days at a time, but we would know where she was at.
We thought that we'd find her before we even contacted the police. The police only had like 2 to 6 people on the force, and we thought we had more resources than them.
We were looking for Henny for about 4 or 5 days before we decided to file a missing persons report. Nobody even looked at her report. Nobody even looked for her. On December 28th, about 40 of us came together to go look at the last place we heard from her. When we were out there doing our search, the FBI were out there.
About 5 o'clock, the FBI came in and they asked us, can we talk to you guys?
They pulled us aside into this room away from everybody, and that's when they had told us that they found her.
I couldn't say nothing at all. My stomach just hurt. It's just like a horse kicked me in the gut.
Then his sister came running because I guess I had screamed, and I don't remember screaming.
Well, Paul and Nate, it's good to meet both of you, but I'm sorry for the circumstance.
Thank you.
And I'm so terribly sorry for your loss. One thing you won't hear me say is I know how you feel. Because if you haven't been there, you can't know, right? It's just, it's not the natural order of things.
No, it's not.
You know, first, tell me about your daughter.
Henny, she'd light up any room she walks in. She was friends with everybody. She didn't have a mean bone in her body.
And she was 14 when she went missing, almost 15, right?
Yeah.
And you say there were only 2, 3, 4, they're a very small police force to rely on, right? So you relied on the community to look for her when it came time to look for her. How many people turned out to look for her?
About
Then, yeah, there was quite a
40,
few people.
50 people, yeah.
When she was actually found just 200 yards
From somebody else's house.
where she was last seen.
Yeah.
She had left, she had been with some people, and she didn't make it very far from there.
No.
What have you pieced together in terms of what happened? What do you believe took place?
I believe that she was lured out there and set up, because she's been at the house before, and she knows the route to the road, to the main road. And where they had found her was the opposite direction.
Okay, so you think she was lured. And how do you think they would do that?
They were saying that somebody had chased her. Somebody was chasing her.
And why do you say law enforcement treated y'all, you said actually like criminals?
Yeah.
Because it was like we're being interrogated, and every question was like, where were you guys at, man? You know, I was like, man, I was at work that night, you know?
What was their attitude about the fact that she was gone?
When she went to file a missing persons report, they said that, oh, she might have had a boyfriend, and she might be over
She
there.
had a new boyfriend.
Yeah.
Maybe a new boyfriend.
And it's like they didn't take us seriously, like just pushing us off to the side like it was nothing.
Do you think it would be different if somebody in a neighboring town with a blonde-haired, blue-eyed child that was missing, do you think they would respond differently than they did with you?
Probably because they got more resources off the reservation, to where, like, off the reservation, you see somebody like go missing, and they got an Amber Alert right away.
Helicopters and maybe more cops there, and dogs even.
Yeah, and you say there was no communication from the tribal police?
Yeah.
Why not?
I don't know.
That's what we want to know.
Yeah, that's one of
yeah.
our questions.
Coming up, Paula says she saw signs that Henny had been assaulted. But what did the autopsy reveal? We'll talk about that next.
They couldn't tell me how long she was deceased, how long she was laying out there. I don't know if they just didn't want to do the paperwork or the footwork on it.
Well, you did. You wanted to do some footwork. And later,
Like, it's scary knowing, like, that moment something bad could have happened. Would it have been another Native girl missing?
Monday.
Stop indoctrinating our children.
critical race theory. It's been branded a poison in your child's classroom.
Enslaved Africans built this country.
Our children deserve to know the full truth. I do not believe it's appropriate for K through 12.
It's not being taught in K through 12.
No. It is being taught.
We are pitting our children against each other based on the color of their skin.
That's Monday. Then on Tuesday, beware of the card narcs.
When I do see that some lazy bones has left their card out, I turn on the wand of justice and activate the mouth siren.
You do more than just ask them to put their card back.
Is your disability lazy bonesitis?
You shame them.
Now with cart narcs, that's just curbing. It's a violation. If I just go out there and say, why don't you take it back? They don't see the consequences.
You just don't know what the hell you're talking about because the evidence contradicts what you're saying.
That's Tuesday.
Her death has been at the forefront of the missing murdered Indigenous women's movement across the state. Tonight, we've learned no charges will be filed in the case of missing Lame Deer girl Henny Scott, found dead back in December 2018. U.S. Attorney Kurt Almy said his office cannot prove any federal crime was committed when Scott walked away from a Lame Deer home that night.
Well, former criminal prosecutor and true crime investigator Lonnie Coombs says when she learned about Montana's crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women, she wanted to find out why so many cases remain unsolved and at times even overlooked. In her new documentary, Murdered and Missing in Montana, she tries to find the answers.
Every Native American in Montana has a relative who went missing or murdered.
This just keeps repeating itself over and over again. These young girls keep disappearing, and these young girls keep dying.
Children are going missing, they're getting murdered, and nobody's even batting an eye.
When these parents come and say, my child is missing, that should be the trigger immediately for a response.
We can't even find the last girl before the next girl goes missing.
How many more of these girls have to die on these reservations before somebody does something about this?
The reservation is an easy preying spot for anybody that wants to grab a girl for sex trafficking.
They take our girls, traffic them, drug them, murder them, and they rape them.
She was only 14. She was that young, and they didn't make it a priority.
Nobody would listen to us.
If a 14-year-old white girl froze to death in your neighborhood, there would be an inquest.
If you want to get away with murder, go to the Northern Cheyenne Reservation.
This is a missing person. This is a 14-year-old girl we're talking about.
The statistics here are staggering.
They are. They are. Honestly, they are such epic proportions, I think it's overwhelming. People can't even get their mind around how horrific this is.
Well, you uncovered a pattern in these cases. Tell us about what you found.
I went in to look at 3 specific cases, and in each one of them, the lack of response was shocking in 2 different areas. First, when the girls go missing, the lack of response to take that report seriously, to do anything with it. And then when the girls were found, nothing was done. And that should be the beginning of, okay, what happened to them? Where were they during this time we couldn't find them? We're going to start our investigation into finding out really what happened. Instead, it was like, okay, no foul play indicated, hypothermia, we're done. No questions answered for the families, and really no response other than that.
So in this case with your daughter, the autopsy did say hypothermia. What do you think happened?
I think she got assaulted out there. And see, they couldn't tell me how long she was deceased, how long she was laying out there. I don't know if they just didn't want to do the paperwork or the footwork on it. That's all they had to tell me.
Well, you did. You wanted to do some footwork, right? Yeah. Because in Oxygen's documentary, Murdered and Missing in Montana, Paula and Nate sought the help of renowned forensic pathologist and a good friend of mine, Sarah Wecht, to perform a second autopsy on their daughter. Let's take a look.
Looking for justice for their 14-year-old daughter, Henny Scott's parents have made the difficult decision to have her body exhumed for a second autopsy. No one has ever explained to them what happened to Henny the night she died.
Hi, Dr. Wecht. It's so nice to meet you. My name is Lonnie Coombs. How are you doing today?
All right, nice to meet you.
There were some photographs that Henny's parents had that looked like there were some bruising on her body. Were you able to see those photographs?
Yes. And there is indeed a little contusion up at the bridge of the nose, extending from one side to the other. There is something suggested could possibly be a fracture of the nasal septum. Can't be sure.
So I see the blood alcohol level is a 0.065, but there's all these other numbers. What do these all mean?
The level of alcohol in the vitreous humor, the fluid behind the eye, was 0.214.
Is that a lethal level?
No, it is not. 0.214 is not lethal. Based upon the facts that you have set forth, I would say that doing an exhumation autopsy would be desirable, and I would be prepared to do this if you all want to move ahead.
And doing this exhumation was a big decision for you guys, right?
Yeah.
Both emotionally and just in terms of the customs and practices with your tribe. Yeah. That's just not something you do, right? So you had to really be frustrated and really desperate for answers to do that. But as we know, as time passes, the ability to learn information deteriorates, and so you don't necessarily find anything.
That's right.
That there was nothing earth-shattering that came from that gave any direction that would help find perpetrators or anything that would unlock the mystery.
There was a detail that you'll hear in the documentary that he did determine in the results that does lead credibility to the fact that the suspicions that something did happen, that she wasn't just there the entire time. You know, the theory of the police is that she just ended up there on her own volition and was there the entire time. So we did find something, but as you said, it's so late in the game. It's so late. If the police had done this right off the bat, there's a chance that something could have been followed up on. And it happens over and over again. I mean, these numbers are astronomical. When you say that 94% of a population, these women, will be raped or coerced in their lifetime. That's almost 100%. It's almost a given that if you're born a Native American girl, you're going to be raped or coerced during your lifetime.
Yeah. When y'all hear that, is it shocking to you? As Lloyd has said, if you are born an indigenous woman, it's almost 100% likely that you are going to be preyed upon in your lifetime. When we come back, we're going to meet another Montana mother who says she wants answers. Her daughter went missing 4 years ago. She's still searching for her.
Ashley got picked up from her cousin and got dropped off at a house party. When I couldn't find Ashley, I called the Bureau of Indian Affairs and reported my daughter missing. They didn't take it serious. It seems like when another woman goes missing on the reservation, she's just another face on a flyer.
I'll be throwing...
The Federal Bureau of Investigation has joined the search for a missing Browning woman. Ashley Loring, who also goes by Ashley Heavy Runner, was last seen in Browning in 2017.
After her disappearance, Ashley's family and friends, along with countless volunteers, painstakingly combed the mountains of the Blackfeet Reservation searching for her.
It is not fair to my daughter, you know, that another year has came and then we have no answers.
The month of June will mark 4 years since Ashley Loring Heavy Runner was last seen.
Well, Ashley Loring was only 20 years old when she disappeared 4 years ago. Now, she was last seen in Browning, a Montana town on the Blackfeet Indian Reservation. Now, her mother, Loxie, says there are still, after 4 years, no answers.
The last day that I saw my daughter, I was going on a trip, and I was going to be gone a week. I went into her room. I told her that I loved her and that I'd be back. You know, you don't ever think your daughter's going to come up missing. You don't ever think this is going to happen. June 5th, Ashley got picked up from her cousin and got dropped off at a house party. She met this man that she was familiar with and left with him, and he claimed that they were together for 6 days. And on June 11th, 2017, this man claims that he drove my daughter 8 miles from his home, pulled over, claims that he fell asleep, and then he woke up and my daughter was gone. I came back home on June 15th. When I couldn't find Ashley, that's when it was real. I was scared, and I called the Bureau of Indian Affairs and reported my daughter missing. They didn't take it serious. They thought she might have just left town. We decided to do our own search and take it into our own hands. We located the man that was last with Ashley. I took it upon myself and stayed up to his house, parked outside of his house, by myself, watching him. The Bureau of Indian Affairs didn't go search for her until June 29th. It took 14 days for them to actually go out and search. The evidence, if there was anything there, was gone. It seems like when another woman goes missing on the reservation, she's just another face on a flyer. My daughter just isn't another face on a poster. She had dreams. She was my daughter. Somebody should go out there and find her.
Well, Loxie is joined by tribal filmmaker Rain. Two of his films, Say Her Name and Somebody's Daughter, have drawn international attention to the murdered and missing Indigenous women crisis. Thank you both for being here. And where do you think your daughter is?
It took a long time to realize that. I don't think my daughter's with us today. And I don't know, but it's been 4 long years.
And that's very hard to say.
Yep.
I'm sure to consider that as a real possibility. What frustrates you most about the way they responded or failed to respond to your case?
After we reported it, it took 14 days, but in that time, they only searched for her for 6 days. And,
wow.
And it's just frustrating that we don't have the help.
Well, Rain, you've really dug into this. How do you explain the lack of reactivity to this?
You know, I think there's a great degree of institutionalized racism, and I think that people do not want to recognize history because things don't just happen in a vacuum. Tribal populations are largely invisible to the general population. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Because most people's points of reference come from old Hollywood movies, you know, casino Indian stereotypes and sports mascots. So if you deny a people their identity, they become invisible.
One of the things that puzzles me about it is what you guys are saying, these two families are saying, is they're getting non-response from tribal police. Are they just that undermanned?
Tribal police, you know, their hands in a lot of ways are tied. Yes, they're underfunded, chronically underfunded. You know, there's a lack of training, but they are not the ones who have jurisdiction over these cases. It's the federal authorities that have jurisdiction over these cases. And so, you know, a responding tribal officer will call a Bureau of Indian Affairs investigator, which is federal. The Bureau of Indian Affairs investigator will then very likely call the closest FBI office. Now, as I'm talking about this, imagine the amount of time that elapses. And, you know, you and I both know that when it's a missing persons case, rapid response is absolutely critical.
There goes your 48 hours.
Right. After 48 hours, you know, sadly, you know, the evidence tells us that we're looking at recovering a body, not a missing person alive.
Exactly. When we come back, one woman tried to find out how many Native Americans are missing in her state, but couldn't get the answer because they've been othered. She'll explain what she means next.
It's very scary and it's very hard to walk into a grocery store and having to look over my shoulders, knowing you can be a victim at any moment.
Closed captioning provided by
Acorn County has fewer than 14,000 residents and has some 27 documented missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls cases and approximately 20 missing and murdered Indigenous men and boys cases. At least half of the MMIWG cases are unsolved. The nation's media isn't focused here, though there are 240 plus more victims and likely many more due to underreporting.
Well, that was Juliet from Rain's film, Say Her Name. And Caitlin has become the face of MMIW Crisis. Now, she's been on billboards and posters throughout the country. Now, both of these Indigenous women say they are trying to educate their community through grassroots programs. Juliet, Caitlin, thanks for being here, both of you. I really appreciate it. When you guys say grassroots, what are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to get out there?
I think the biggest thing that we're trying to do is to bring awareness as to what's going on. So
The pattern here is that it's our own people doing all of the work to try to get awareness and to try to get on a platform as big as this so that people understand what's going on. It's our own people doing all of the work that we possibly can to stop this crisis from happening.
Yeah. Well, Juliet, tell me what you discovered when you investigated the numbers of missing women in your home state of Louisiana.
So in Louisiana, there were no documented missing and murdered Indigenous cases because the coroner's office did not acknowledge Native Americans. You were either white or black or other.
That's just hard to believe. Juliet actually went to Bighorn County to get answers regarding why so missing from that county. Did she have any luck? Well, take a look at this clip.
After multiple fruitless calls and emails seeking the perspective of the Bighorn County Sheriff's Office, I made one final attempt and decided to try and initiate a conversation on MMIWG at the most basic entry point by asking if they had any past or present missing persons posters. Hi, how are you?
Good.
Good. So I was just wondering if anyone had a poster or a missing persons flyer for K. Sarah Stops Pretty Places.
Okay.
But you don't currently have one, correct?
I don't know.
Okay, so you don't know if you have a poster or flyer, missing persons poster or flyer.
Correct. I will look into it.
Okay. Is there someone here, I'm sorry, what is your title?
Captain.
Okay. Is there someone here that would have any information about being contacted through email to give comment?
I'd get with my detective.
Okay.
And see.
And who's that?
It's, Ty.
Okay, last name?
Cruikshank.
Okay.
All right. See what he did, because he's working those cases.
Okay.
So,
but he's not here?
no.
Okay.
Today he's not.
Okay.
We actually have a statement that came in just this morning. Bighorn County is undeniably a community in crisis. It is past time our communities embrace the life and demands for justice amidst the many issues associated with the missing and murdered Indigenous persons. Be recognized as the modern civil rights cause for our generation. I'm glad they responded. Now, Caitlin, you've been sensitized to this from a very young age.
Yeah, it's very hard being a Native American woman with the thought of having that target on your back. Just knowing that if I were to go missing, that I wouldn't be taken seriously. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm a good person in the community or not. Like, I'm a Native American woman. And like I said, if I was to go missing, like, I wouldn't get the attention like Gabby. It's very scary and it's very hard to walk into a grocery store and having to look over my shoulders, knowing you could be a victim at any moment.
This isn't paranoia. That really is the reality right now.
It's hard to go out and just do normal things. It's hard to just go out and be comfortable out in the world, go to a cafe and have a coffee by myself, because I'm constantly looking like, is that guy over there staring at me, or why is he staring at me for too long? Like, I've been circled in a Walmart parking lot just standing outside of my car. Like, it's scary knowing that, like, that moment something bad could have happened, and I would have just been another Native girl missing.
Yeah. And so y'all know, it's your face that's on the billboards, right, with the red hand across your face. A very compelling message and billboard. When we come back, the congressman who is shaking things up in Washington by making people accountable, we're going to talk to him next.
Monday.
Stop indoctrinating our children.
Critical race theory. It's been branded a poison in your child's classroom.
Enslaved Africans built this country.
Our children deserve to know the full truth. I do not believe it's appropriate for K through 12.
It's not being taught in K through 12. No. It is being taught. We are pitting our children against each other based on the color of their skin.
That's Monday. Then on Tuesday, beware of the card narcs.
When I do see that some lazy bones has left their card out, I turn on the wand of justice and activate the mouth siren.
You do more than just ask them to put their cart back.
Is your disability lazy bonesitis?
You shame them.
Now with cart narcs, that's just curbing. It's a violation. If I just go out there and say, why don't you take it back? They don't see the consequences.
You just don't know what the hell you're talking about because the evidence contradicts what you're saying.
That's Tuesday.
Closed captioning provided by...
History will be made. Unreal. The USFL Championship game. Sunday at 7:30 Eastern on Fox.
Almost every Native person knows someone who has gone missing, has been murdered, has been sexually abused. My own cousin was murdered in front of her daughter. I have another relative who's been missing since July of 2018. Her case sat untouched, not looked at for 3 months. As a Native American woman, life on the reservation is hard, knowing that there's targets on our backs.
Well, Congressman Greg Stanton from Phoenix, Arizona, has worked to elevate individual stories of missing and murdered Indigenous women and press federal law enforcement, including Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Chris Wray, to do more to address this crisis. Now, he co-sponsored and worked to pass 2 critical bills last year. Both were signed into law in October 2020, and he's joining us virtually from Washington, D.C. Please welcome Representative Greg Stanton. What do we need to do to change this here? You're changing it at a legislative level. What do we all need to do?
Well, Dr. Phil, first, I just want to say thanks to you for using your amazing platform to raise awareness of this tragic issue. This is a national shame. Number one, we need more media attention on this issue. All missing women and girls, particularly our Indigenous women and girls who have gone missing at such alarming rates, deserve the same level of attention. So we need to do a better job of raising awareness and attention and media attention on this tragedy. 2, Rain brought it up, but these jurisdictional issues between local law enforcement, between tribal law enforcement and the federal government, which so often takes too much time after someone has gone missing or a crime has been committed. That's unacceptable. And then finally, we do need more resources. The federal government needs to step up to the plate and do more. Right now, we have over 300 tribal communities around this country, 300 reservation communities, but there's only 140 dedicated federal FBI agents for all of that. That's not enough.
Do you know from the resources available in D.C. where these Indigenous women are going? They're disappearing, they're not being found, they're not being brought home to their families. What's happening to these women?
Dr. Phil, I think one of the real tragedies about these circumstances is that tragically we weren't even tracking these cases in the way we should. We didn't have databases. How do you provide a strong response to this tragedy unless you have that information? The truth is, until we put more resources and logistical support behind finding out more information about these cases, we won't have the best federal response that we can have.
Man, that is scary, and you're right, it is a shame. Well, coming up, we're going to add someone to the conversation, an Indigenous woman who says she's angry at the press. She'll tell us why next. Summer is the season where most kids look forward to no school, lots of free time, and warm days to go out and play. But for many children, summer means a lot less to eat. During the school year, more than 22 million children receive free or reduced price meals, but that drops to less than 4 million in the summer. During the summer, the Feeding America network of food banks helps provide free meals to children who depend on them during the school year. Find out how you can help feed a child this summer by going to drphil.com, because summer is no fun when you're hungry. We're talking about a problem that has been ignored in our society for far too long: the shocking number of missing and murdered Indigenous women in this country. Now, Ellie Bundy is trying to make a difference. She is a tribal council member and secretary for the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes of the Flathead Indian Reservation. She is also the presiding officer for Montana's Missing Indigenous Persons Task Force. She's joining us virtually from Montana. Ellie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dr. Phil.
What's your take on this? How do we tackle this, and where are these women going?
You know, I agree that we don't know. There would be several reasons I would speak to that women would go missing. First and foremost would be that it's a result of criminal behavior.
You don't have any missing women on your reservation as of today. So what is your reservation doing differently than the others?
There's several things. I think our tribe had the foresight to establish a missing Indigenous persons work group through resolution. And so we have a great team of amazing people from the community, our tribal law enforcement officers, and others who have come together to work on the issue. And based on the work that we did there, we were invited to work on a tribal community response plan that brought other people to the table. We're trying to be proactive.
Well, you have a question. Why do her missing Indigenous people not get the same support and media coverage that someone like Gabby Petito received? Representative Stanton, why do you think that is?
It's obviously a very complex question, and there's a lot of historical reasons, tragic reasons for that being the case. What I want to work on is what can we do to fix the issue now? Henny and Ashley, there are our fellow American citizens and are deserving as much media attention and support for justice as anyone else. And that's what I'm going to fight for.
There's a way you can help the missing and murdered Indigenous women. We're going to talk about what that is next. It's Dr. Phil here. Don't forget, not only can you there was a point you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up relative to the meteor that between 2011 and 2020, there were 710 Indigenous people, tribal people, went missing in Wyoming. 50% of those were women. And there were no headlines, there was no mass media attention to any of that. But relative to what my friend, the congressman, was saying about, jurisdictional cooperation, in Gabby's case, you saw that jurisdictional cooperation is possible. And, what we need to do is, we need to get comprehensive federal legislation to address these issues, to address that interjurisdictional maze that exists. I was working with the late, great civil rights icon John Lewis on a bill called the Reduce, Return, and Recover Act. And what is it that he always used to say to people? When you see something that is wrong, When you see something that is not right, is not just, is not fair, you have a moral obligation to say something, to do something, and to not be quiet. So I would urge everybody who is watching this show, everybody who is a colleague of my friend Representative Stanton, every single person can come together to make a change, and make a change, and make a change right now, because every day we wait, there's some other girl, there's some other young woman, there's some other young boy who goes missing. They're going to be the next ones that's dredged up out of a lake, and we just cannot allow this to keep happening.
Representative Stanton, one last question. I assume the thing to do is ask the millions that are watching here to write to their congressmen, write to their senators, and let them know this matters, let them know that they care about this?
Yes, that is certainly a strong action that individuals can take. But in addition, write to your local newspaper, write to your local TV news station saying you want to see more information on the issue of Native Americans, Native American issues, and particularly this tragic issue of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls.
That's great advice. Thank both of you for what you've had to say here. 23 Indigenous families of the missing and murdered women from all over the United States sent us their loved ones' picture. If you have any information, please call the Missing and Murdered Unit at 833-560-2065. And if you see anything suspicious, please say something, do something. Your voice matters. You can make a difference. Those pictures and that number are going to be on drphil.com. They're going to be on my Facebook page. They're going to be on all of my social media platforms. So please, you can find them there. Study those pictures. This could be somebody that you're walking past every day. Pay attention. And if you see something, as Rain says, say something. We're out of time today. I want to thank all of my guests, and I want to pledge my continued use of this platform to bring attention to this. Oxygen's Murdered and Missing in Montana is available on demand and on the Oxygen app. Lonnie, thank you. You always do amazing things. Thank you for being involved in this. Rain's film, Say Her Name, can be found on somebody'sdaughter-mmiw.com. For more information about today's episode and to see the many faces of the MMIW, go to drphil.com. We'll see you next time. Thanks for being here today.